Hello everyone, it is your favorite kind of punch, Mr.Falconpunch 996, the underrated king, the recommendation master, and of course YouTube's #1 Doro Hidoro fanboy, back for some more Dragon Ball Z movie reviews. And today, we're going to wrap up the original Dragon Ball Z movies with Fusion Reborn and Wrath of the Dragon.
Fusion Reborn starts off with a little accident in the underworld that literally causes all hell to break loose, as well as give rise to a monster by the name of Janemba. And once again, it's up to Goku and some of the Z Fighters to save the day. Now, first things first, this may be one of the most visually impressive and creative Dragon Ball Z movies to come out. There's tons of color and jelly beans, oddly enough, everywhere. I love the cartoony art style during the living world sections, and the final form of Janemba looks badass. Who, speaking of which, while without a doubt copy-paste of Majin Buu, his powers were at least pretty creative and made for some very interesting fights within the movie. I also found the whole concept of the dead returning to the living world quite interesting, since not only was it visually cool, we also got to see previous Dragon Ball Z villains like Frieza and some other members of the Ginyu Force, Bojack, Pargus, and Hitler? Yeah, Hitler was in a Dragon Ball movie. Hitler was in a fucking Dragon Ball movie. Not only that, but Hitler actually existing in the Dragon Ball world just leads to so many questions. But before I lose my mind trying to think how that all works out, but while I did enjoy these scenes, I honestly felt there could have been a lot more done with them. I mean, come on, the Earth is in chaos with the undead, Shenron is unable to send them back due to the underworld being messed up, and tons of previously defeated villains from the series and past movies are ready to get their revenge. This actually sounds like a pretty cool story arc, but since it's part of this movie and not exactly the main focus, it's cut pretty short. And the returning villains are defeated pretty damn easily. However, now it's time to get into the biggest part of this movie, being the fusions, because, you know, it's part of the title and everything. Now, personally, I've never been a fan of fusions. Well, okay, at least the ones in Dragon Ball, as personally they just feel a bit too gimmicky. Also, the fact that Gotenks was practically the poster boy for fusion didn't exactly help. However, in this movie, the big fusion we get to see is Gogeta, which I will admit was pretty cool, but also kind of whatever, considering that this is really just a one-off kind of thing. The only other thing I could add is that I'm always surprised that the guy who pretty much started all the events in this movie sort of just gets away with the whole thing. I mean, I know it was kind of an accident, but still, it was a pretty major fuck-up that caused all of the hell to literally break loose. There has to be some kind of penalty for that. Anyways, Fusion Reborn is a fun movie, and in terms of Dragon Ball movies, this may be one of the most visually appealing. However, in the end, despite all this, the movie is pretty much the Majin Buu arc. So depending how much you like the Majin Buu arc, might affect your enjoyment with this movie. But personally, I had a good time with this one, and moving on, we have Wrath of the Dragon. While I do like this movie, I was kind of left disappointed in the end. You see, after hearing the name of this movie, as well as some pictures, I thought this movie was actually going to have Shenron break loose from the Dragon Balls and just go on a rampage or something. Maybe roast the Z Fighters for always using him, or attack Oolong for making him use his great power to make some underwear. Which, you know, sounds pretty hardcore. However, instead I got something completely different. But that's not exactly a bad thing, as the story here is probably some of the best out of the original Dragon Ball Z movies. The Z Fighters come across a magic music box that requires the power of Shenron to open. However, once opened, a warrior by the name of Tapion is revealed, as well as the great evil that was sealed with him. And together, the Z Fighters and Tapion must stop this evil before it destroys the world. Now, while the story at first does sound like your sort of standard Dragon Ball Z movie, there is enough here to make it stand on its own. And honestly, at this point of Dragon Ball Z movies, it's great to see a villain that isn't exactly a copy-paste of another villain or just someone that's trying to get revenge on Goku. What really makes this story unique is the introduction of Tapion, who, in all honesty, is pretty much your typical RPG hero in terms of looks and backstory. However, when fused with Dragon Ball Z, works rather well, and one of the major highlights of this movie is the relationship he builds with Trunks. While I've said many times in the past, I'm not the biggest fan of Kid Trunks, but it's great seeing him here build a brotherly bond with Tapion, giving this movie a lot of heart, which is something a lot of the Dragon Ball Z movies don't have. Though I will admit, they try a little too hard to make Tapion impact Trunks' life, which anyone who's watched this movie knows what I'm talking about. Like, I appreciate where they're going with it, but it just doesn't make any sense. On top of all this, I really like the monster's design in this movie. It's just really badass, and thanks to it, we're treated to many scenes that feel like a kaiju movie. And Kaiju and Dragon Ball just go together really well. I also like that we got to see a lot more of the great Saiyan man and girl, as I always loved the superhero element Dragon Ball had going for it for a while. However, the one thing I really don't like about this movie is Goku's inclusion. Now, I like Goku and everything, and I know you can't have a Dragon Ball Z movie without him, but he just felt so forced into this movie, when really he just didn't need to be here at all. Yes, the Wrath of the Dragon, the title of this movie, is a reference to the attack Goku uses to finish off the monster. But really, that's just the last couple of minutes of the movie, and even then, I don't really feel that it was necessary to have Goku finish off the monster this time around. Personally, this is a pretty big issue for the movie, as it did get in the way of what could have been some great character moments. Still, however, I really did enjoy this movie. I do appreciate that they went a little bit more ambitious this time around with the story, as well as the inclusion of the Kaiju movie elements, which helps makes this movie a great way to wrap up the original Dragon Ball Z movies.
And now it's time to wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we have officially wrapped up the original Dragon Ball Z movie, so that's pretty awesome. And next time I return with a Dragon Ball Z movie review, it's going to be for the new generation of Dragon Ball Z movies, you know, the movies that practically changed the series. So that should be pretty fun, and look forward to it. As always, I am MrFalconpunch 996. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you haven't done any of that yet, you will be Falcon punched in the face. So you better do it, and I'll see you guys next time.